Steve Kim here, and I'm here with the man that you probably see every weekend on your television screen throughout various corners. Trainer, Cutman, strength conditioner to the stars, Mike Bazzel. Mike, first of all, this last year, you've been in every single bubble. Has it worn on you a little bit?
Yes, it has. It sure has, Steve. I've been to every one since June 7th of 2020. That's when Top Rank started the bubble in MGM in Vegas.
It's interesting. I've talked to various trainers. The toughest thing about the bubble is now the weight cuts, that you don't have the fitness rooms. You really can't run around the facilities like you used to. One of your specialties with the SNAC system is the weight cut. So how has the protocol changed in the past year inside the bubble, if anything?
It has changed. I mean, the guys can't, because, in the Top Rank bubble, they were coming in, let's say the fights in the beginning were every Tuesday, Thursday night. So they would come in 2 days before. They would test. They would have a day before the weigh-in where they would have, if they were clear, to have access to the Top Rank gym at MGM. But that's one day. One day they would have to train in their room. As soon as they came there, they'd have to train in their room. Then they would have that day. If you're looking, and the tubs were good, everything was fine for, cutting weight with the bath. But if a fighter came in too big, and the food was, they had no access to food. They had to eat the bubble food. Whatever the MGM provided, whatever was on the menu, you couldn't get any food from outside. So that's a struggle. That was really difficult. And if you notice in the beginning, the shows were criticized as being, God, these are not very good. They're not, it was the emergence of Cassius Clay Collard, right? Because he fought like 4 times on that thing because they call him, he's ready to go. He lived in Iowa, I think, or Idaho. He would drive right down. But the thing was, gyms were closed. So guys weren't training really well. Yeah. You have a gym like Marvel Garcia's gym, that's on his private property. He can train there. But like Wildcard was closed, as you know.
Yeah.
It was shut down. So that was really difficult.
And also, this facility right here next to us was closed. How much did you miss the day-to-day grind of being with the fighters, Remy and Victor?
It was gone. It was all gone in 3 days. Everything.
And did you miss the whole process?
I did. Sure did. I was fortunate. I sat on my butt for 2 months. I trained some clients and over Zoom, like everybody else did. But everything was gone. Everything was shut down. And then when Top Rank, I heard they were going to do it. I was hoping to get on. I was like, put my name in. But they actually called me. Brad Jacobs called me. Brad Goodman put in a good word for me. And Peter Kahn put in a good word for me. Managers who knew their fighters were going to be in the bubbles, they were like, hey man, let's try to get you in there. Because I know how to cut the weight. I ended up cutting Berlanga's weight. A couple of the bubble shows. I cut, who else did I cut? I cut a few other guys in the bubbles too. That, because they had to.
That's one of the specialties of what you guys do, and it goes against the norm of just, hovering around the weight, then sauna for a couple days, and then sweating it off. You guys do it so much differently. Is that what you're being known for? Are you now a specialist in weight cutting, and has that gotten you a lot of gigs?
It has, yeah, sure. With SNAC, especially, it's gotten me a lot of the gigs. Like for example, you guys were talking about, you and Victor were talking about Mikey and Garrel Spence earlier. But yeah, I cut Mikey's weight for that. Not that it wasn't a difficult cut because he was going up in weight. He moved up 2 weight classes. But it was actually cutting him so he felt he had the good energy for the fight.
Mike, I know you work closely with many of these boxers inside this facility. Why do you think that they enjoy it so much here as opposed to a regular gym?
It's they have full access to everything, and it's exclusive just to them. They love it. Not all guys like it. Some guys, obviously they like to bring a lot of people. They like to have a lot of people around. But I will say, with this pandemic and with the bubbles, almost to a fighter, even the fighters who brought big entourages in the past, they love that it's small. And it cut the fat. They brought just the people that they need. They love that there's no distractions, and even not having their families and friends dealing with tickets and all that, they love it.
As you look at the SNAC system, And you work with a lot of other fighters. I mean, like I said, you're in a lot of different corners throughout the world. I don't think you get a lot of weekends off. As you see other camps operate in a very archaic manner, how much do you have to bite your tongue?
All the time. All the time. I have to bite my tongue all the time. And, you know, I would say Stitch is not only Stitch Duran, he's not only my colleague now, but he's also a mentor. Mm-hmm. And he just says, I will bend his ear sometimes, and he's like, Baz, you're just a Cutman. You're just a Cutman. It's not your gig right now, right? And then he'll even say, even in some bubbles when I've had to cut a fighter's weight, he'll go, what are you doing, man? What are you doing? You're a Cutman. What are you doing? You're going back. You're going back. But I'm like, no, that's what I do. That's what I mainly do. Like this last week, I had Demetrius, Andre, so I was part of his team. I did the whole fight week, management type of thing. I was with him every day in training. I cut his weight for the fight, rehydrated him, did all of that, right? And then I went right to another fight where I was just a Cutman.
I think you give new meaning to the term Cutman now, given the role and responsibilities that you have. What would you say, without getting specific with the fighter or a camp, is the most common mistake made by boxers today in the lead up to a fight?
Cutting your weight too soon. There is still, with all that we know about performance and hydration and nutrition, there's still in boxing, mostly, there is still you got to have the guy on weight a week before the fight. How many guys have you heard say in an interview, they go, oh, Steve, I'm on weight. I'm great. It's 5 days from the fight.
Yeah.
I'm on weight. Why? You're never going to fight at that weight. I mean, you can.
Yeah.
You obviously can fight at 147 if that's the weight if you're welterweight. But why? Your opponent's not. He's going to come in 15 pounds more than that, right? And it's like, because all the organizations, WBC, WBA, IBF, all of them, especially the WBC, which is that's the prestigious belt, but that's the one that lays down the law. If you don't follow their guidelines, you won't fight for their belt ever, right? So it scares guys. They all concede that you can gain 10% of the contracted weight, right? So a 160-pound guy, he can come in 176. They all concede that. So why would you? That's your fight weight. That's the weight you train at. Mm-hmm. That's where your performance should be measured at, not at 162, 63. Why a guy sometimes spar 2 weeks before the fight, that last week at 63, 64, because they're on weight. Yeah. It's making them tough. That's what old school guys did. Well, they fought the same day. And it was a different mentality back then. One of the greatest trainers ever that I always read about and I study about, Ray Arcel. Do you know one of his lines was? Water is the enemy of a fighter. That's the exact opposite of what we've learned and what at SNAC we do, right? It's water and oxygen. That's the two basic elements of a human being's survival. I mean, I call it all the time stupid genius.
Mike, you bring up an excellent point that what they weigh in at 24 to 28 hours later is not what they fight at.
No.
If you were running boxing, would you advocate for same-day weigh-ins as we did for about 90 years?
It's interesting because I was talking to, we were at West Point for the fights on Thursday night for Ring City. And we were on the bus ride over, I was talking to Rudy Hernandez about all this. Because Rudy he
weighed in at 9 o'clock on day of fights.
Yeah, and he's an old school guy still. He still advocates many rounds of sparring. And we were debating those things. Not really debating, but he brought up the question right away. What do you think about 14 rounds of sparring for a guy? He's wait for my answer, And I love Rudy. And I go, well, it just depends, Rudy. If you're going to have, it has to be quality rounds. And then he brought up, well, I had a small guy for speed. I had another guy for power. I said, hey, that makes sense. But I've also seen many times a fighter do 12 rounds of sparring where 8 of them were just worthless because they knew they were doing 12 rounds. And it's sparring. And it's in camp. And they're sore. And they're tired. And it's a long camp. And it might be the 4th or 5th, 6th week into camp. Mm-hmm. And they're going to go, so I'm just going to do 8 rounds. I'm just going to hold him. I'm going to do my thing. And then I'll light him up in the last 4 rounds. I just did 12 rounds. right? But you didn't. Your quality of work was horrible. It was a waste of your time. So why not do specific rounds with specific goals in mind, right? Because that's always the case in sparring, and that's always the case in training. You might have a guy you might bring a young kid that does really well against a world champion. Well, that young kid is a young kid. Plus, he's probably not in training camp, or that champion's in training camp. Who knows what he did the day before? Could be sore from it. It might be the third sparring he had in that week. Sore, tired, not recovered properly. You never know. It's such a long camp. It really has to be managed right to take a fighter from a taper to a peak to another taper to be as perfect on fight night as possible.
So would you say that regardless of the rules, whether they weigh in at 3 p.m. the day before the fight or 10 a.m. the morning of, you would have to then just adapt and adjust?
You have to adapt. One thing I really like that's happening, Demetrius, they did it with Demetrius Andrade and Williams. In Florida, we weighed in at 8 a.m. And then at 3, we had the public weigh-in. So they were already rehydrated. We didn't even see the doctors until after they were starting to rehydrate. I love that. I love that because UFC was adapting that. Nevada was adapting that, and then they kind of got away from it. But I love that. I think Canelo, not Canelo and Danny, but it was Canelo and Triple G. They did that weigh-in too, where we did the 8 a.m. weigh-in, and then they did the little public weigh-in after, where they were all feeling great, right? A little dog and pony show. But I just don't think that I do think you have to adapt if it happens, because it's all over the place. Like you said, I'm all over the place, all over the world. It's always different. Sometimes it's 5 p.m. weigh-ins, 3 p.m. weigh-ins, 11 a.m. weigh-ins, 12 a.m. weigh-ins. You have no idea. You get there every time it could be different. You have a 3-hour different time zone. You have a 8-hour different time zone. 2-hour different time zone. You don't know. So all of those factors play into the management of fight week, the strategy of when do we cut the weight? When do we cut the weight? Traditionally, if it's an 8 a.m. weigh-in, you cut it at the night before. But then you're also going to interrupt the sleep pattern of the fighter. They're not going to get the right sleep that they need. So their deepest sleep to kind of recover for fight night is going to be after the weigh-in. If you do a same-day fight, right? You cut the weight, they're not going to get that sleep they need, which is super important. And that's something that's very neglected, is the rest, the proper sleep on fight week. So if you do the weigh-in, if you do the fight that day, they're not going to get the right sleep they need. They're not going to get that good night's sleep. So they're going to be dehydrated, have no sleep, get as much rehydration as possible, and then have a fight that night. It's detrimental to the fighter. Where now, hey, we have 30 hours roughly from scale to ring, where they do have that restful sleep that after the weigh-ins are done. That's the only real chance I have to rehydrate a guy, because on fight day, every guy's different. Some people you might see them during the fight day. Hey, what do I eat? Come to breakfast with me. They want you to come to breakfast with them. They want you to do. Some guys, you don't see them until you pick them up for the venue.
Right.
They're by themselves, or they're with tight friends and family. They don't want to see it. But during the weigh-in day, traditionally a Friday, let's say, they'll want you to come over all the time, because you're a part of rehydrating them. Yeah. They want you. Oh man, what do I drink next? Oh, what do I eat next? I'm so ready. Give me whatever. I'm ready. They're different. It's a different mood.
Yeah.
So I really think it's good to do the day before weigh-ins. I don't think it's it's specifically for the sleep part.
Yeah.
If anything else.
Mike, I see the SNAC hoodie on you, and I think you're closely associated and tied, given that you are part of the team. Let's go all the way back. When did you meet Victor Conte? What was that like? What were your first impressions?
So actually, I knew Veronica Conte. So Veronica, we had one of her girlfriends. She worked at Undisputed Boxing Gym, where I worked at in San Carlos, and I knew Veronica, and she had dropped product off.
The daughter.
Mm-hmm. And she had dropped product off to the gym a few times. We tried to sell at the gym. It just didn't. She tried to help us out, but it didn't work out. And I didn't know anything about supplements, to be honest with you. I didn't know anything about it. Everything I know, I learned from Victor. So I just never used them, right? So so Nonito came, and that's when I started training Nonito Donaire. And Nonito actually ran into Victor at the bank. And Nonito came back to the gym, and he goes, "Hey, Baz, I met Victor Conte. What do you know about him?" I said, "I don't really know anything. I know of him. I used to work, my first gig as a boxing class for fitness was at World Gym in Burlingame, which is right across the street from Balco. I used to see Balco, but I didn't know what it was. I had no idea what it was."
Now, Mike, you're living in the Bay Area.
Yeah.
Or Barry Bonds was a big... You really had no idea who Victor was.
I knew Greg Anderson. I'd seen Greg, but I'd never seen Greg train Barry Bonds at the gym. I'd heard about him when I got to the gym because they would usually argue all the time, like brothers. And they would yell and cuss, and Barry would run out there and say, "Get out of here, I don't ever want to train with you again," all that kind of stuff. I'd come to the gym later, and they'd go, "Oh, Bonds was here with Greg today. Oh, they were going at it in the gym," all this stuff. I didn't know any of that stuff, right? Didn't know any of that. So Nonito said, "Hey, what do you think?" And I said, "Hey, well, I know Veronica really well, and I think it's worth a conversation. I think you should talk to him." Because Nonito wanted to go, he had won the 112, he was going to fight for the 115 interim title, and he wanted to follow in Pacquiao's footsteps. He wanted to go 15 to 18, 22 to 26. He needed help. He needed to do it the right way. And he wasn't a drug guy. He did not want to do that. There was always the rumors of what they did, Pacquiao did, and all that stuff. Always that rumor. And Nonito was like adamant about, "I don't want to do any of that stuff. What do you think?" And I said, "Hey, let's talk to him." And that's what happened.
So
when I first met him.
So as you start to really work with Victor side by side, I'm sure you learn more about him. What would you tell someone that has never met Victor Conte? What is the biggest misperception of him as a person?
That he's out for himself only, and he's gonna do stuff to you that you don't know about. Everybody says that still. Oh man, you don't know what you're taking. You don't know. I said, "You're an idiot." I say it all the time. I said, "Look, I've said it all the time." And I remember when we had Sean Porter, and he was going to fight Paulie Malignaggi, and Paulie was convinced when he lost that Sean was on stuff. There's no way he wasn't. That's not true. And I just worked with one of his trainers this past week, and we talked about that, and he was like, he knows Paulie's over all that. He knew he just got overwhelmed. But the deal was, I said, "Paulie, come here. Come here, man. It's transparent, man. You'll see everything that's going on. There's no hiding it. The product line is not a huge product line. Yeah. It's not like there's, I got this specific stuff for the fighter. I have this specific stuff for the client. This is stuff for the housewife. This is the stuff for the guy getting in shape. None of that stuff. Everybody uses this stuff. Tried and true over 30 years. So why would you say that? I mean, it's ridiculous. But they still, that's the perception now, is that no, man, he's gonna, you don't know. He's gonna do all that stuff to you to make you a Superman, and you don't even know it. You watch, you're gonna get caught. I'm like, you're full of it.
Mike, you touched upon it, and that was gonna be my next question. When you go to various venues all across the country, how many times are you asked about Victor Conte? What's he like? What does he do? What's it all about?
All the time. And especially I work with Demetrius Andrade. I work with Daniel Jacobs. I work with the Sergey Derevchenko. Charlo comes up all the time, right? Jeez, I'm tired of this guy, But they're adamant about, they all do that stuff over there. They're full of it, We're not 100-0. We've lost.
Yeah.
But the thing is, that's the value of this, is you are giving the support that the fighter needs to perform at his best or her best. That's rare in boxing. It's very rare. What blows my mind is you have promotions that sign fighters, and they say, "Steve Kim, you're going to be paid $1 million to fight Mike Bazzel. He's going to be paid $900,000. I'm going to give you the $1 million this time. I'm going to be paid $900,000. we're going to fight June 18th. How we get there, that's on us. They don't support how we get there.
Yeah.
Why would you do that? And then you're scratching your head if a guy comes in and he bonks, you know? If a guy comes in overweight or a guy comes in overtrained and they lose, or, you know, the favored guy, like, all of a sudden, wow, how did he lose that? What the hell happened? Why don't you know what happened? How could you not know what happened? You're paying this guy all this money. You signed him. You built their record. You built them. But you have no clue. Their team, Stitch will say it all the time. He says it's the only A-level sport where you do not have to be A-level to be involved in it.